dear friends. Thank you so much for joining our conference today. We've invited our colleagues and friends from all over the world to talk about digital inequality. Digital inequality might seem to be not an acute issue, but it very much is. People and children from around the world have no access to technology, to mobiles, to computers or data, and this is becoming very much a global issue. We'd like to thank Close the Gap, Tech Goes Home, Level Up, and Connected Kosovo for joining us today to talk about solutions for this global issue. We thanking you for joining us today and hope you stay tuned and enjoy our conference. Thank you very much. And let's hear from our next speaker. I'd like to introduce Gulnaz and Danyar, who are our next speakers and who are founders of Connected Kazakhstan. Both of them have worked in education, and both of them realized that education inequality that has been existing in Kazakhstan for a long time is being exacerbated by digital inequality. Last year, they've decided to launch Connected Kazakhstan to help children from remote areas receive computers and digital education. Gulnaz and Danyar will talk today about Connected Kazakhstan, but also about the implications of digital inequality in Central Asia.
Today, we'll be talking about how pandemic exacerbated existing digital inequality globally and in our countries, immediate actions we took to ease the situation, and the further work that needs to be done. Even though our local contexts vary, we realize how similar problems that we face. In this conference, we want to explore the unique responses from our partners from around the world. Tech Goes Home, representing US, who brings communities at the center of their work. Level Up, initiated by Martin, who individually created a campaign to help kids from UK. Close the Gap from Belgium, who inspired us to bring sustainability to our work. And Connected Kosovo, which navigates the big data for social good. All of us gathered here today to exchange best practices and support each other on this rewarding but also challenging journey.
Helping children is definitely a rewarding experience. We realized that when we were delivering our first batch of laptops to the families in Taldykurgan and Tikili in May 2020. We had to be fast and efficient to make sure that at least 1 month of their distance learning would not be wasted because of the lack of equipment. That was really a precious moment. However, the scope of the problem might seem never ending. And especially in Kazakhstan, where we don't have well-established giving back culture. And it's easy for equity advocates to burn out emotionally. And for this moment, it's really important to understand that you have the people across the globe fighting the same problems, but in a different context. Knocking 1,000 doors is really time and energy consuming. But it doesn't matter where we're from. Children from disadvantaged communities require our action. And when it comes to high quality education for all kids, it's never enough. We want to thank our partners, especially Soros Kazakhstan Foundation, HelpCenter.life, Beyond Curriculum, Lincoln Conference, and many other organizations and individuals. We are also grateful to our team, our positive energy and enthusiasm. Thank you all for supporting us in this journey towards digital equity and being generous in sharing your experiences. We could not do this alone. Enjoy the conference, and we hope it's only the beginning of our cooperation. And as our champion Solomon Jonah from the Soros Foundation said, one of the distinguished features of Connected is shared values and principles. And we are so pleased and blessed to have all of you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gulnaz and Danyar. Before I introduce our next guest speaker, let's do another poll. Can we start at poll number 3, please? Okay, so how many computers Close the Gap has collected? Close the Gap is our next speaker, Marnie Quinn, who will represent Close the Gap. Okay. So I hope everyone had a chance to respond. Here we go. Okay, so I think Marnie will share a little bit more about it, but Close the Gap has collected over 1 million computers, which is incredibly impressive. And the next question, projects from how many countries have they supported? Just another minute for everyone to respond. Okay, we should be good now. Can we have the responses? Yes, most of you guys are correct. Projects from over the 50 countries were supported by Close the Gaps initiative. And I would like to introduce Marnie Quinn, but also before giving him a word, I would like to thank them that because in the early dawn of Connected, our team was looking for similar initiatives from around the world. And we've stumbled upon Close the Gap. I mean, by saying stumbled, we found them. They were one of the first organizations that showed up when Googling digital divide. And they were incredibly helpful, always supportive in all of our requests, even when we had no clue what we were doing. And Marnie has supported us immensely, and we're really, really grateful to Marnie and to Close the Gaps team. And please join me in welcoming Marnie Quinn.
Thank you very much, Nessie. I hope everyone can hear me loud and clear. Yeah, okay, perfect. Thank you so much for the very kind introduction. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm very glad that you invited me to this conference today. And let me say that I'm also very impressed with the work that Connected is doing in the region where you are active, because like you said, Close the Gap has been working on bridging the digital divide for a while now. But it's really important that similar initiatives arise in other parts of the world, and start working towards that same goal of creating kind of a level playing field for everyone through digital tools. So thank you so much. I will start my presentation. Let's hope everything goes well, because that's always a bit of a hassle. Yeah, so I think this should be fine. Can everyone see my screen now with the slide? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. I tried to make it so that I can see my notes, but you can't. I think I succeeded, but if you see some notes, then don't bother. It's just for me as to run the presentation smoothly. All right, so Close the Gap. Who are we? We are a social business, a nonprofit organization. Fundamentally, we are based in Belgium. We have been founded in 2003, so that's about 18 years ago, by our still current CEO, Olivier, who kind of started as a graduation project. So we had to create this virtual company for university, and then he decided that he would create kind of a virtual organization that would collect ICT equipment from companies and then give it a second life. And he realized that this was actually quite valuable, and that we could really make a difference with this. And he then gradually built up the organization as it is today. I'll later go maybe a bit more into the fact that I introduced this as a social business rather than a nonprofit. But as I said, legally we're a nonprofit, and there's let's say all of the money and the resources coming into the organization are being put into let's say maximizing the impact that we realize. We have a couple of the SDGs, of course, that we're working on, mainly quality education through ICT, hardware, reduce inequalities. Like I said in my introduction, the digital divide, the fact that what we call the West and the global South, there's a big difference in the infrastructure that's available, and this is really causing inequalities. And then there's, of course, the two others: decent work and economic growth, and then responsible consumption and production through the circular approach that we have. But more about that later. Before I go into this slide, maybe a very short a word on myself. So my name is Marnie. I'm a project manager. I'm mainly responsible for digital for development within Close the Gap, as well as a couple of other special projects, is what we always call it. And I've been with the organization for about 5 years now. So that's my short word on me. On this slide, you find an overview of what we're doing within Close the Gap, or the different things we're working on. And this is rather new. I think it's maybe even the first time we show it to an external crowd. So that's first for me. On top, you see there's the refurbishment part. That's something Connect is also working on. So basically collecting ICT equipment. Nessie already mentioned that we have collected over 1 million ICT assets as to date, which is quite impressive. But of course, we have the ambition to even get some more. We collect this equipment from companies, mainly in Europe, but also internationally. And we collaborate with refurbishment partners, so professional refurbishment companies that are external and that collect the equipment on site from our donor companies. They test the equipment, wipe all the data, and prepare it for reuse. We have about 70% of the equipment that's being fit for reuse, and about 30% that goes to recycling because it's not functional anymore, or whether or the specifications are too low for us to reuse it in one of the projects that we support, because we of course have some minimum standards and quality that we want to assure. And then we get into the next slice on education. So I would say that about 80% of the equipment that we provide to our project partners, who are mainly situated in sub-Saharan Africa, about 80% goes to schools, so secondary schools who have a computer lab and who need quality equipment, but who cannot afford it at the local market value. We have local partners who import equipment in bulk. So these are nonprofit organizations that know how to, do the import procedure, do the local distribution, last mile distribution to schools. They install the equipment. They offer some extra software if necessary. They train people how to use the equipment, how to teach with ICT equipment, which are two different things, etc. And they also take back, but we'll get to that when we're at recycling, but they also take back the equipment at the end of life. The third slice is on entrepreneurship. This is something we have been working on since a couple of years now, and it will also come back later in my slides. It's for us, let's say, through our activities and through the distribution of ICT equipment, we encountered many inspiring entrepreneurs, many young people who had some great ideas, but who lacked on the one hand, the infrastructure, but on the other hand, also training and skills to really grow a business and try to have some impact for a local community. And we therefore started working on entrepreneurship as well next to our ICT hardware pillar. And I think the two fit together quite nicely, but I'll get back to that later as well. And then impact investment, the next one is very much related to entrepreneurship, of course. So we basically have kind of an investment fund that we use to invest in entrepreneurs that we believe in and that we see for which we see a nice fit with our own purpose and mission. And these are always related to digital or technological applications, because it's really our field of work, of course. And then finally, there's a recycling component there. We also want to take responsibility for all of the ICT hardware that we put on the market in mainly Africa, but also in other parts of the world. And we kind of founded about a little over a decade ago. We founded a sister organization called World who's working on supporting ICT or e-waste recycling in challenging environments such as sub-Saharan Africa. For example, through technical support of recycling companies, but also through financing these very same organizations so that they collect the equipment in a proper way and also dispose of it in an environmentally and socially friendly way, because this can be quite harmful if you do it the wrong way. And so that's how we kind of loop that's how we map our strategy or our business, I would say. Some of these aspects will come back later. I can't cover everything in 30 minutes, of course, but I'll try to give you a good overview. This one gives a more close look on our ICT, collection and redistribution scheme or process. So basically, we get devices donated to us. We go and collect them on site from the donor companies. We prepare them for reuse. We then select, projects that fit within our scope, which is either social, educational, or entrepreneurial projects. We ship we ship the equipment. We make sure that it's being installed and distributed locally. And then, there's some maintenance by our local partners as well to make sure that the equipment stays in good shape. And then finally, when we're at the end of the second life, we have our local recycling partners who take back the equipment, who dismantle it, and then make sure, that fractions such as metals and plastics, which are used also and pretty easily to recycle, that they can be reused locally. And then more complex fractions such as motherboards, batteries, etc. These are being let's say, collected or rather stored in higher volumes until a container load can be shipped back to Europe to be processed here and recycled here by a professional recycler. And then let's say the value created through this recycling process also goes back to the local partner and thereby finances the refurbishment and the recycling activities of our local partners. I think we have some data on the next slide. Yeah, so like I said, we have about 1 million assets that we have collected so far. We have 25 local service partners, mainly in Eastern Africa, but also in other parts of the world. I guess the blue parts on the map give it away. Through our recycling partners, we have so far collected 300 tons of hazardous waste. We have collected 2,370 tons and thereby spared 300 tons of hazardous waste that would otherwise go into landfills or be burned, and with all the environmental problems that arise from it. And we have about 3.5 million unique users that we reach weekly through all the schools that we have provided with ICT equipment. And we use kind of a formula for the impact that we put forward here. So basically, as you see, we have collected 1 million units. We have pre-deployed 175,000 computers. There's a difference between the two of them because there's part of the equipment, and that's maybe an important one to add on our business model. There is, on the one hand, part of the equipment that we collect that is not fit for use. So that's about 30%, I would say. And then there's also a part that that is either not in demand from our local partners because it's too high end, or because it's not, it's not high end enough. And this equipment is being sold by our refurbishment partners, either here in Europe or through our international sales chains. And the value that is created, or the revenue is created from that, comes back partly to close the gap. And thereby we finance our operations, our overhead, my wages being paid through this this revenue. So that's how we kind of finance our business. I'll show, I hope it works. I'll show a short video. It's a long video, but I'll only show part of it to give you an idea of how it all started and, you know, where we are today. I hope this will go right. And I hope you will also get some sound on it, but we'll see how it goes. That's our CEO, Olivier.
Unfortunately, I don't think we can hear it.
Me neither. I was already thinking
Okay.
that this might be a problem. Apologies. I have honestly no idea how I can solve that. So we'll have to do, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering, maybe you can send us a link and we can share it with our guests, or do you want, or is it all subtitled?
It's all subtitled, I think, but I can send you the link anyway, and then you can
yes, that would be great.
You can distribute it afterwards. I'll write it down for us to do, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Apologies for the inconvenience. It's always something that goes wrong when you have to do this virtually. This is, by the way, this is a refurbishment site in Belgium. The previous thing you saw was a DigiTruck. This is a mobile classroom that we have developed to go into more rural areas. So it has kind of solar panels on top. It has about 20 laptops inside, and then a teacher can go into very remote areas and teach ICT skills to the community there as well. These are some pictures of, you know, the early days of Close the Gap. It's also being shot in the refurbishment site in Belgium. So I mentioned that we have different refurbishment partners, and the one in Belgium is actually internalized. A couple of years ago, the company that we collaborated with decided to shut down business, and then we managed to do a takeover bid and take over the organizations, that because it was vital for our operations. We collect lots of equipment here in Belgium and in let's say Western Europe as a whole, and that therefore our Belgian entity was very, very important. So I think, yeah, looking at ConnectTV, I think you guys have not been in business as long as we have, but we've also started from a basement, you know, in the university, and trying to get those first 20 computers and making sure they got to the first project partner. And I think this video, it's very long, it's 15 minutes, so I'll shut it down in a minute. But this video nicely shows, you know, how we started, how this guy, for example, is now explaining how they introduced us to different CIOs from high level companies, and thereby expanded our network. Oh, by accident shut down the video, but it's okay. I just have 30 minutes anyway, so I'll get going. In any case, I was saying, so they introduced us to CIOs from many companies, and this really got our foot between the door. Olivier, our CEO, is very charismatic and managed to convince many you know, companies to donate their equipment to us. Basically, it's you know, equipment that does not hold any value for them anymore in the books, in the accounting. So it was more you know, easier for us to ask for computer equipment than to ask for financing to buy computers ourselves, basically. And that's how, you know, our business model kind of started and developed. And now we have I think it comes back in my slides maybe, but we have about 300 active companies donating to Close the Gap nowadays, which is how we got to these high volumes nowadays. So this is how it started. Close the Gap today, as I already mentioned, we're focusing mainly on two different pillars. On the one hand, ICT hardware distributions. On the other hand, entrepreneurship support programs. We have a couple of years ago, I think 2.5 years ago now, we've decided to also go into Africa, because we've been always very strong there, and we've decided to open up our own premises in Mombasa, in the coastal region of Kenya. Where we now have kind of a co-working space and incubator for local entrepreneurs. And I think this is what I mentioned before, this is such a nice fit to have. On the one hand, you know, the ICT infrastructure that we have available, we have high volumes. We want to you know, make use of them in an impactful way. And on the other hand, we have the entrepreneurship support programs, and also the basically the accommodation for it. So basically the co-working space, entrepreneurs come in, we offer them a desk, we offer them a laptop, and training, support, mentors, etc., in order for them to develop their business and to maybe make a successful startup that will then impact the lives of thousands of their community members. And that's kind of what we're working on today. So expanding our service offering to better play into the needs of local entrepreneurs in the local community. We are, for a Kenyan entity, we're B Corp certified. I don't know if everyone knows this, but this is a kind of a certification that you get if you're a for-profit business, which is the case for a Kenyan entity, because we couldn't be a non-profit organization for legal purposes in Kenya. But we are B Corp certified, meaning that we do business in an impactful way, and we're not only looking at profits, but rather at the impact that we're creating through our activities. Maybe something more on the refurbishment site that we built in Mombasa in Kenya as well. So you just saw the Belgian entity. In Kenya, we have built a similar facility where we are now also processing equipment and distributing to the East African region from. I'm afraid the video is going to work, but the sound might not. But I think the sound is just like a background sound, so that doesn't really matter. So it's called the Circular Economy Hub. I think it's the first, well, I'm pretty sure it's the first of its kind in Eastern Africa. And since Africa is really our core focus, we thought it would be nice to have a local facility there as well, in order to generate some local employment. Also, lower our costs, basically, because you have to imagine, if we put people to work here in Belgium on refurbishment, a computer resulting from the refurbishment process will cost more than a computer being fully refurbished in Africa, because the wages are lower, overhead is lower, and you can thereby create more impact with less investments. And that's really what we're trying to do with our Mombasa operations. This is data wiping area. So there, the computers are either wiped or get imaging of software. This one is doing a little tour through the warehouse. Here you see our storage capacity. Now we're a couple of months later than when this video was being shot, but now we also have computers on the higher racks. Of course, we have quite some high some volumes available. So this secured area for hard drive processing, very important. Many companies require data wipe certificates, and if a hard drive cannot be wiped, then you have to shred it so that the data cannot be compromised. So that's a short introduction video on the Circular Economy Hub. I thought it would be nice to show what we're doing in Kenya as well. And then maybe a bit on our impact investment fund. So I mentioned that we're really trying to make a nice combination between ICT hardware and entrepreneurship on the other hand, and thereby offering basically ICT as an enabler for more impact. We let's say saw some opportunities for working on entrepreneurship in the region where we are now active. Although I must already add that we're looking into other regions for our entrepreneurship programs as well, mainly Central Africa, Congo, South Africa as well, and there might be other places that will follow. But there's just a lot of potential in Africa. Many innovative businesses start from Africa nowadays, and we really wanted to be at the heart of this and contribute to the local development. There's different topics that we want to work on, of course, but there's also always, as I already mentioned, a link with digital and technology, because that's our business, of course. Now, enough about Close the Gap, I would say. I put in some numbers on general mobile phone use, but also other ICT hardware use in Africa, to give you an idea on what the situation is and why what we are doing. And I'm not talking about Close the Gap as such, but every organization like Connect TV working on bridging the digital divide, and why it's still so important. So there's a strong increase in smartphone use in Africa. As you can see, between 2011 and 2017, there's a big increase in the difference between feature phones and smartphones. It is expected by 2025 that 475 million out of the 1.4 billion people who will by then live in Africa will own a smartphone. So that's about 34% of the population. There's still, a long way to go. But another 600 million will have a feature phone, and this is important if you're working on not only providing ICT hardware, but trying to take the extra mile and provide some extra support for the local community through training, etc. You have to make sure that you adapt to the local situation. And for example, you have some brilliant USSD, which is regular feature phone technology, SMS based basically. You have some brilliant applications for this, for example, farmers who get SMS information on the weather forecasts, on market value of their products, etc. These are the kind of things that we try to grasp as well, and support entrepreneurs that are tapping on the local solutions or on the local circumstances, and have solutions that are really tailored to their local community as well. Mobile devices can be a catalyst for sustainable and technological developments. I put down, for example, through financial services. I think many people don't know that the mobile payments as we know them today have actually arisen from Africa. It's something very common there. People send money to each other all the time through their phones. I would say years before we even started using our smartphones to perform payments. And this is one of the, I would say, the finest examples of the potential that lies in Africa, but also in other, developing countries in the world. And I think there's, a big leap that can be taken if we provide the right tools and the right support for these communities to go forward. This one is from GSMA on mobile internet penetration, and it's an interesting one because you see that actually, although more coverage has been realized, so mobile phone coverage or general internet coverage basically has been realized in recent years, there's an increasing gap in people using this broadband. So there's really a lot of potential for hardware providers to tap into that and to make sure that the coverage gap and the usage gap lowers, so that we are, let's say, that we end up with the coverage gap, and that if the coverage gap is being bridged, then everyone is connected and everyone can benefit from information and from knowledge sharing. Why are mobile devices so popular in Africa? I think it's pretty straightforward to some extent, but I did want to list a couple of factors at play. So there's almost no landlines, fixed phones, that's almost inexistent. So Africans had to kind of leave that technology and just go straight for mobile phones, because it made no sense for them to install these landlines anymore once mobile phones started to gain popularity. They reached the poorest and largest section of the population. I've added, they're more affordable on laptops and other business devices below, but it's really a tool that can be affordable for people at the bottom of the pyramid, and that's one of the reasons why it's so popular in Africa as well. The mobile market is competitive versus the fixed telephone monopoly. So there's many mobile phone providers. There's a competition between them, and that runs down prices. You can get access to the internet through your mobile phone, of course, 3G, 4G, maybe in time 5G in Africa as well. There's already infrastructural work being done on this, so it won't be long. And mobile devices drive economic and social development, and that's what I already mentioned. For example, through mobile payments, you have to imagine if you are a local shop owner in a village, and everyone needs to get some cash money somewhere in order to pay for their goods from you. Your sales increase greatly if they can just pay you through SMS-based technology on your phone, and this has really helped many of local entrepreneurs to grow their business and to thrive. It's a driver for economic development. Maybe I zoom in on this. So a 10% increase in mobile penetration rate, either for, and this is basically broadband, so it can be used for both mobile phones as for laptops or desktops if you have a 4G connection on a router. But a 10% increase in mobile penetration rate leads to a 1.2 increase in GDP for low and middle income countries, which is substantial, and it's really remarkable. So it's definitely something that African governments and governments in any low and middle income country can keep in mind when deciding on budgets, etc. I would say, and doubling broadband speed. So if you have broadband available, but it's pretty crappy, then there's you don't reap the full benefits of it, I would say. So if you double those broadband speeds, there's an increase of a further increase of 0.3% in GDP growth, which are, in my opinion, pretty spectacular numbers. There's also, the impact on health. It might be not the first thing you have in mind when you're thinking about a mobile phone, but in some of these the regions listed below, as you can see, mobile phones really lead to a substantial decrease in maternal mortality, mainly because, for example, when they have contractions or issues during their pregnancy, they can call for help or call for an ambulance or a boda driver to take them to the hospital. But there's also many technologies, USSD based or smartphones based, that distribute information on maternal health. So women that access information not through their local midwife, but through the internet, and that can, gain some knowledge on the pregnancies that they are experiencing and how they should treat their body. And this, as you can see, leads to substantial decrease in maternal mortality. This one is on other factors at play in having a mobile phone or other device for which makes you connected, basically. You can read for yourself. There's, of course, tons of others examples, but these already give an idea. Here's one specifically on the COVID-19 response. Many countries in Africa, and this is just tip of the iceberg, basically, but many countries have launched information campaigns, but also data collection campaigns through mobile devices. So I guess this is, everyone expects this, of course, but it's vital. And if a lack of equipment in these kind of environments leads to worse information sharing, then you have a problem. The 21st century skills. I think this is something Connect it works on this as well. It's pretty straightforward nowadays. I mean, digitalization, it's not something you choose for. It's a reality, and given the jobs that are being created nowadays and that are sometimes replacing traditional jobs, you just have to include digitalization in your education system. And I really wanted to put this one down. It's from Applied Educational Systems. I put it down in the middle. It's an enabler for information gathering, self-empowerment, and better chances in the job market. And there's so many more factors that are at play here. But I guess, you're given the audience or the conference we have here today, I'm pretty sure everyone among you is already convinced of this. Maybe going back now to why all the examples I put forward before have led to Close the Gap investing also in entrepreneurship on this level. Basically, there's really market opportunities to be gained in the let's say the area and the ticket size, if I can call it like that, where we're active. There's many organizations, this is specifically for East Africa, but there's many grant organizations and other support and investment companies working on these kind of entrepreneurship support programs, but there's very little being done specifically on impact investment for ticket size between $100,000 and $500,000. And this is where Close the Gap really wants to step in and provide this kind of financing for entrepreneurs that are promising. So the goal is to empower the lives of Africa's most vulnerable population through investing in tech solutions. It's the story I've been telling since the beginning of my presentation. So we provide capital, we provide technical assistance, we provide accommodation, infrastructure, access to the network, access to investors, and thereby want to increase, the probability of success of these startups, and also the even provide some own capital, some proper capital for them to grow their business and to impact their local communities with solutions that have been built by local entrepreneurs for the local communities. And I think this has the highest chance of success. It makes no sense for us coming from Europe, from the US, from anywhere, bringing our brilliant applications and devices to Africa or to Southeast Asia or wherever if it's not tailored to the local community. I see my slide here has shifted a bit, so apologies for that. It's one of the projects that we support. I just wanted to give it as an example. So Malaika is an organization working with young girls, trying to empower the community by educating young girls. And basically, they're based in Congo. We've provided, I think, over the years, roughly 150 laptops to them. But basically, they involve their local community in their educational system towards young girls. So, for example, the parents of these girls are also coming to the community center where they're being educated, and they also take the responsibility in remodeling of the place, trying to maintain the surroundings, the gardens, etc. Also provide food for the kids through the communal system. So it's a really, really nice project and one of thousands that we have supported over the last almost 20 years. Sorry. This is a Belgian one that I also wanted to briefly touch upon. It's called Decode. It's a coding school for people with a distance to the job market, and they have a very nice model in the sense that they offer training for free to these people. So there's a selection procedure. I think training takes about 9 months. And then afterwards, there's placement of every software engineer that they have trained, or coder, or web developer. They have collaborations or partnerships with tech companies and government institutions. They place their, let's say, interns in these companies, and when they get a formal contract, they get like a placement fee for, the training of this excellent recruit that they then brought forward to these companies, and that's how they finance their business, basically. So I just wanted to add it as one of the projects in Belgium that we support as well. And here you have finally an overview of the partners and the clients is what we've written there, but I would rather call them partners. Many of them are donors of Close the Gap, and I would say there's even more since we drafted this slide, but it gives you a good view on the kind of organizations we're working with. And I would say ConnectED, there's probably many of them that are also active in your region and that do not donate equipment to us necessarily from that region. So as you can see, they were inclined to donate to Close the Gap in Western Europe. So maybe if you reach out to them, you have good ambassadors for donating in your region as well. I think I went a little over time, but I think we also started my presentation a bit earlier, so I hope that's okay. So thank you everyone very much for your attention. I hope it was interesting, and if anyone wishes to reach out to me on any of the things I brought forward today, I would warmly welcome to do so. You can visit our websites. We have a website for the Belgian entity and for the Kenyan entity, and I'll definitely send the video for the 15 years anniversary that I showed earlier briefly. I'll send it to Nessie so that she can distribute it to you as well, and I'll drop it in the chat as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Marnik. We have a couple of questions here, but first of all, we need to give our interpreters a little break. So if anyone even in our audience have questions, we will in Russian or Kazakh, you can leave them in comments, and when we will translate them in comments section. But our interpreters will have a 10-minute break. And meanwhile, we've received a question from our attendee, and Jambota is asking, what is the role of the government in your activities?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Basically, I mentioned in very early on that we are a nonprofit, but we are independent of government support. So through the business model that we have of part of the equipment that's being sold on the European market as well to generate income for our overhead, this allows us to be independent of government support. So that's a big advantage that we have, because it makes us flexible and we can really do our own thing without being limited by government regulations to that. Well, I would say many traditional NGOs have to submit 5-year programs and then have to follow up on these programs because the government has paid for them and they have to report on them, and we don't have this problem. So in that sense, we're kind of like I said, independent, but we do have, of course, some good ties with the government in the sense that if there's an interest from their side to work with us on bridging the digital divide, then we do so, of course. And we have done it, for example, during COVID last year in March, when Belgium was hit pretty hard by COVID. We had issues exporting our equipment to Africa. At that point, there was little traction going on. It was very difficult for us to keep supporting our partners in Africa, and so we managed to go into a partnership with the Belgian government and distribute about, I think, 18,000 laptops for Belgian disadvantaged students that then got a laptop to follow their courses online during the COVID pandemic. So that's for the Belgian side. And then for Kenya, our relationship with the government is also purely, business government relationship, basically. So there's no strong ties between us. It's rather trying to weigh on the government in the sense that sometimes, ICT refurbishment is still regarded as bringing e-waste to the country, which is understandable because there's been some abuse in the past of people exporting e-waste to Africa and disguising it basically as a donation of ICT equipment. So there's sometimes it's a bit difficult for us to work in some of the parts in Africa, so that we try to inform governments on what we're doing and how we're doing it, so that they lift the ban on use ICT equipment and allow us to work with local partners on bridging the digital divide, basically. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Jambota, for asking the question. If anyone in our audience has any questions, please feel free to add them in chat. And meanwhile, I wanted to ask a quick question about connectivity. You've mentioned that it plays a huge role in making use of technology and also in GDP of countries. And I was wondering, maybe I might have missed that, sorry, but I was wondering if Close the Gap does any activity in providing any connectivity to communities in Africa that don't have that.
Yeah, very good and fair question. We have had some collaborations in the past for projects where we collaborated, for example, with a satellite provider or with a mobile operator, so a mobile communication operator. but we have not yet developed a final solution or an in-house solution for connectivity within our projects. And this is something that has held us back to the extent that for Workless Gap to be able to support the local community, there's quite some conditions to be met, mainly infrastructure. You know, you have to have a solid building that has a nice roof on top to make sure that the computers are being stored well. You have to have electricity to hook up the computers, and then, as you mentioned, connectivity. And connectivity is the most challenging one for some areas. It's something that we have collaborated on, but that we have not yet really fully integrated in our program. So basically, if we sell computers to our partners, we cannot yet offer them like a full package saying, look, you can also opt for this Wi-Fi router or whatever, and thereby provide connectivity for your projects. We are, however, investing in a solar organization in order to have kind of the combination of the two. So basically, we would build nanogrids of solar panels that you can connect, for example, 10 laptops to, or even more if you have a bigger setup. And then there's also in the connector between the solar panels and the laptops, there's also a spot for a SIM card that you can use to create like a 4G Wi-Fi router, basically. And this is something that we want to test in late 2021, and then maybe even roll out in 2022 across all of the regions where we're active, because I think that would be a really nice solution. But yeah, it's a very valid question, and it's something that we've been trying to work on since for a long time now, but it's a challenging business. And definitely, for example, if you're talking about satellite provided Wi-Fi connection, which is not, as as I've shown through some of the slides, there's some parts where there's really no coverage, and these areas are it's a very large investment to be made, and we're unfortunately too small to go into these kind of big projects. But yeah, maybe one day.
Thank you so much for the answer. And we've received a comment from one of our speakers that Martin is hoping that SpaceX Starlink might be the answer.
That's a very good point. Yeah, or the Google, you have the Google Balloons project. That would also be a very nice one, but I haven't heard from it for a while. So I hope they're just working hard and making it happen.
Great. Thank you so much, Marnik. We'll have a panel discussion later on in about hour and a half. Feel free to stay on or join in later for the discussion. And thank you so much for presentation. If any of our attendees have more questions, let's give it another minute for questions, and then we can move on. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I think we're good to go. Thank you so much again.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And before we move on, let's do another round of poll questions. I think everyone really enjoys it. I do, at least. Please, question number 5. Ready to roll. Okay, so do you think, is there a digital divide issue in the US? Probably not, right? There's Silicon Valley, Facebook, how could there be? Oh, wait, disappeared. Okay, here we go. We'll give everyone 20 seconds to respond. Okay, I think everyone's good. Yes, okay, so some of you think that there's not a problem with digital divide in the US, but most of you think there might be probably. Can we have the next question, please? So there's Absolutely an issue. Digital divide is a global issue, and the US is another country that faces it as well. And how many school children in the US lack a device, do you think? We'll give it another 10 seconds maybe. Can we have the results, please? Yes, so majority of you are correct. There are about 10 million children in the US who don't have access to a device. And when we say device, we mean laptops or notepads. And yeah, so, and before I let Theodora join us, I want to introduce her by saying that we've been absolutely inspired by Tech Goes Home does in the US. We've recently, Connected has recently started doing the digital literacy courses for our beneficiaries and for their parents. And when we were looking for similar organizations, we found Tech Goes Home, and we were absolutely inspired by their impact on communities they do in the greater Boston area. So please join me in welcoming Theodora Hanna from Tech Goes Home.
Thank you, Nessie. I'm so excited to be here today and just grateful to be among these amazing panelists, learn about the incredible work being done all over the country, all over the world. So thank you for having me, Connect Ed. I'm going to pull up my slides. All right, so we're Tech Goes Home. We operate in, let's see, there we go. Operate in Massachusetts in the US. Our mission is to empower communities to access and use digital tools to advance their lives. So simply put, what that means is we provide computers, internet, and training to those without, so that students can do homework, adults can find jobs, seniors can connect with loved ones, everyone can access telehealth, and generally people can use technology and the internet to meet their needs and improve their lives in whatever way they need to. So this is a little bit of a snapshot of the digital divide in the US. This is the kind of problem we're facing. You can see that, as Nessie said, there is absolutely a digital equity problem in the US. It comes down to income in a big way. So 44% of adults from lower income households don't have decent home internet, and about the same amount lack a computer. 15 and 10 million students respectively lack internet access at home and a device. So in a pre-COVID world, they couldn't do homework. During COVID, they couldn't even participate in school because so many schools were operating remotely, particularly those serving the lower income students. And then coming down to skills, 1 in 3 American workers lack basic digital literacy skills. We train staff at those sites to run our 15-hour program. And it looks very different depending on who's in the course, whether it's a course for a young adult looking for a job, a homeless person, a family with a young child, a family with a high school age child, a group of seniors. It really is customizable to the needs of the people in the class. And those 3 really add up to our digital inclusion intervention. And we find provide an opportunity to benefit from the digital world. So these are, this provides a little bit of a picture of the learners we serve. So 90% are people of color, about 90% live in very low income households. about 27% don't have internet when they come into the program. And that's at all. Then there are folks who have it but can't afford it, as I mentioned. We have about a third of adults come in unemployed compared to the national average of 6. So we're really reaching the people who need benefits of the internet the most. And then about 50% are English learners. So we work with a ton of immigrants, people who often aren't able to access the benefits of school, workforce, healthcare, for language barriers, for income barriers, for age reasons. People who, as I said, really need the resources that come with the internet most and are cut off from them. So we've done the 15-hour training program for over 21,000 learners in the past 5 years. We were actually founded in 2000, but we've grown dramatically and changed over the decades. So our recent history is 21,000 learners and 14,000 devices in the past 5 years. And then, as I said, the culturally competent digital skills training program that is designed to meet learners where they are and to flex to their schedules, to be accessible. And really, it's about someone sitting down with a senior, and I did this last year, sitting down next to a senior and helping them sign in, create an email account for the first time. And it can take, I think it took us about 40 minutes to enter the password for the first time, but just teaching folks who maybe have never touched a keyboard, maybe have many folks who've been incarcerated and kind of missed the recent advances in technology, don't know what a smartphone is, don't have any idea how to use a computer, helping them develop the foundational digital skills that they need the partner sites I mentioned that serve the we want to just a foundation of trust in the communities, which is absolutely critical to us. We are a staff of 11 and we could come into the community and do a training, but we'd be gone the next day. And this way we're teaching a librarian to deliver the training. They'll be at that branch tomorrow and the next day, and the learners can come back and benefit from all the other amazing resources in the library. Or we're training a school teacher who will, again, be there going forward for the families of the children in their classroom to come back and build a relationship and help support that child's academic journey. So we have about 375 of those certified instructors. They're amazing and the lifeblood of our program. They're really just the most incredible people who want to help those who are facing incredible barriers beyond their already full 9-to-5 jobs. And then our budget is about $3.2 million US dollars. So quick sampling of our impact. We really look at it, as I said, it varies so much what is taught in a particular class based on the needs of the students in that class. But we really look at it across these 3 main categories: economic opportunity, education, and healthcare. So we collect a ton of data, but these are a few examples of things we look at across those areas. So are people able to access telehealth appointments after taking TechPros home? Are students using their devices for schoolwork, and are students' grades improving? Are adults finding new jobs, finding better jobs? Are adults who had the option to work from home during COVID able to do so, and able to keep themselves and their families safer because they have the connection, the hardware, and the digital skills to work from home? And then across the board, some things like internet skills. Are you learning skills that you can use to help improve your life? Or are you making connections, new connections, and stronger connections in your community or with your child's teacher? Some of the sort of touchy-feely questions like that as well. So that is what I have. I'd love to answer if anyone has any questions. Again, it's so exciting to learn about all the amazing work going on around the world in this space and the different approaches to it. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you so much, Theo. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to add them in chat or in our Q&A box. And meanwhile, as usual, I have a question, and I was wondering, I can only assume that COVID-19 has become a challenge for you in terms of teaching and maybe funding, and I was wondering what challenges have you faced due to the pandemic?
Yeah, it's would be 10 people sitting in a computer lab in a library. School or the basement, but anything virtual, we kind of assumed that it with the level of learner that we're working with, we really needed to be in person. It looks like you're frozen, Nessie. Can you hear me okay? I'm wondering if I'm frozen. Nessie?
Oh, hey Theo, so sorry, a connection issue, ironically.
Okay, sorry, it might have been me. Can anyone, can you still hear me?
Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, great. So, so we just assumed that because we're working with such early internet users, people, people who don't know what a trackpad is, that kind of thing, you need to be in person and able to COVID hit, we had about 1,000 people across our footprint in Eastern Massachusetts. And okay, what are we going to do? Could we do this virtually? And we program, piloted it, tested it, ramped it up, and realized that it actually works quite well. Not for everyone. There are some learners and some instructors that are still anxious to go back to in-person. But our retention rate stayed at about 90%, which is, we have a 90% graduation rate. We were figuring out the logistics, like shipping devices and internet hotspots when appropriate directly to people's homes. So it's actually been quite eye-opening thinking about if this can work virtually, what are the implications for people that we can reach who are geographically more diverse, but also homebound, hospital bound, subject to a schedule, multiple jobs, no childcare, things that make it very hard to go in person. So that's been one very interesting journey. It has firmly in the spotlight.
Yeah.
And people who weren't talking about it before, I mean, it's part of President Biden's platform now, and that's incredibly exciting. all sorts of political candidates who it just wasn't an issue for, or it was a very issue. Now it's kind of front and center, and everyone realizes that it's absolutely critical. So we feel that it's an opportunity to really seize the moment and make sure that it stays front and center and stays in the national spotlight. And we hope to capitalize on the momentum.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for you. I just wanted to leave a quick note for our interpreters that for Q&A, you can take a little break, and we'll keep the translation on in 10 minutes. And meanwhile, we could just continue our Q&A in English. I was also wondering, similar question to our previous speaker. I know there's a connectivity issue in the US as well. And I was wondering, how do you address that issue?
And are you talking about accessibility or the different aspects of connectivity, like the accessibility, portability?
I guess different aspects of it as well, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. So in the US, it's typically in rural communities, it's more about the infrastructure, can people actually physically get the internet? And in urban communities, it's really more about affordability. There are many more people suffering from the urban divide than the rural divide, even though both are very important, just because so much of our population lives in cities. But it's really shocking to look at maps of cities at percentages of people who have broadband adoption at home and overlay them with income maps, and it's directly tied to income. You can see that that the two go hand in hand. So we offer two solutions right now. One, we're an advocate. We advocate for higher quality, lower cost options for our learners and for people generally. Two, we offer options, which are, one is a $10 a month plan with decent speeds. It's through Comcast, who's a good partner of ours. And they actually just increased the speeds, but that's one option. And then the other option is shipping a hotspot and directly to a learner's home. And neither is perfect, but both we're always trying to work on improving the options and just get more adoption across the board.
I was also wondering about the digital literacy courses, and are they targeted towards specific age group, or do you have various types of courses?
Yeah, so sort of both. We serve people 3 to 93, we say, although our oldest participant, I think, has been a 96-year-old. And we will have courses for families with very young children, sort of 3 to 6, that are more focused on healthy literacy and STEM skill building apps. And how do I help my child interact with technology in a healthy way? How do I personally use technology and the internet to benefit my family? And then we have courses with families with school-age children that are often about, how do I interact with my child's teacher, or track my child's grades online, or find an after-school program. And then we have adult focused courses. So folks looking at career advancement. We do a lot of English as a second language partnerships, organizations working with English learners, and they sort of do Tech Goes Home as well, so that they can get the skills as a bundle. Work with folks experiencing housing instability. And then we do a lot with seniors as well, with older folks, about as I said, big things for those courses are keeping in touch with people and being less isolated, accessing healthcare resources online. But then there are things like, signing up to vote, or this year we had the national census, and participation online was an option. And so we did a big push on making sure that people who typically don't get counted, like undocumented immigrants, helping them make sure that they do get counted and that we can get an accurate count. So it really varies a ton across the board.
Oh, that's an incredible amount of work you guys do. And I guess my last question is, unless there are no questions, I don't see questions and comments, but it seems like you guys do a lot of work with the community support and community engagement. And I think that's, personally, I find it the toughest part. You can find tech, you can find funding, but keeping community engaged is really challenging. And I was wondering, how do you guys do that? Do you have a secret recipe, or?
Oh, I missed the end of your question. Sorry. I hope it's not.
Oh, yeah. I was wondering. Yeah, how do you guys do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. We, as I said, our partners are absolutely fundamental to our program. We find, I think what works well is that the work we do helps them achieve their mission. So if they are focusing on career advancement or English as a second language, or helping their students achieve academically, being able to spend 15 hours building a relationship with those clients or families or constituents, being able to reach them, send them emails, know that they have a computer at home to use, really helps our partner organizations enhance their impact. Similarly, we offer a lot of support to the instructors who are staff members at our partner sites, like professional development workshops, support throughout the course. We do a ton of data collection and share some of the data with partners. So I think that the partners see it as really a benefit to their program and to their staff as professionals. Also, they just have fun doing it because, as I said, the instructors are these amazing, caring, wonderful individuals who see the impacts they're making on the face or seniors or families. We get the computer when they send their first email and they do their first video chat, and that's sort of, I think it sort of hooks people.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Theo. And thanks so much for participating. Yes, and feel free to continue staying here in our presentation, and or if you want to, you can join us a little bit later for panel discussion in about an hour. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you
so much. And before I introduce our next speaker, we'll do our traditional poll questions. And question number 7. So we've heard a lot about organizations that do amazing impact, and it seems like you need tons of money and tons of resources to contribute to solving digital inequality. What's your opinion? Let's give another 20 seconds for people to weigh in. No, we need resources. No, we can contribute. Okay, seems like we've had enough time. Can we have the results, please? Okay, some of you think that you need tons of resources and tons of money to solve the issue, and we will try to prove you wrong. And I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Martin has been absolute inspiration for our team. And when we first connected with Martin, I think it was a month ago or a couple of months ago, we've been absolutely thrown off by how much impact Martin has done on his local community. And we're also really incredibly grateful for Martin for giving invaluable tips and advices, and that have really, we've been able to pivot our work so that it has more impact on our community, thanks to the tips Martin gave us. And join me in welcoming Martin for our next presentation.
Thank you very much. It's really exciting, actually, not just seeing and hearing about all the different projects going on, but just thinking about all the different parts of the world that you're all representing, which we might actually be able to go out and visit at some point fairly soon.
Yeah, that'd be great.
It's going to be a cool thing to do. Yeah, well, thank you very much for that lovely introduction. My name's Martin Saunders. I'm the founder of Level Up. I'm just going to get my slides up, so hopefully this all works. Is that looking okay?
Yes, looking great.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Yes, so as Nessie explained, Level Up is doing things in a slightly different scale. So you've heard from Marnie from a kind of global point of view with millions of laptops, and Theodora from a big US city point of view. Think of the kind of scaled down a little bit. What can one person, one individual do, and how can they potentially help? So I set up Level Up because we're in exactly the same situation as we've heard now from both the previous speakers. I saw a big issue at the beginning of the pandemic of particularly young people in our area just losing out from education because they were sent home from school and didn't have a device to work on. So I heard about this because I'm a councillor, so I'm an elected member of local government in my area. We have 3 tiers of council. The first tier, the biggest tier, is about roads and schools. The kind of second tier is about bins, rubbish and recycling and all of this kind of stuff. Third tier is kind of known as parish council. It's the kind of most local, the smallest tier. And that's the tier that I'm a member of. So we don't have big grand budgets. We don't build roads, we don't build schools or this kind of thing, but we are the closest to our communities in understanding what's going on. And I was hearing about from our local schools and teachers about children just disappearing at the beginning of the pandemic. They were sent home and they were being sent schoolwork via email or through their online systems, and they were just hearing nothing back. And it was an amazingly high number of large percentage of kids that they weren't hearing back from. And when I looked into this a bit more, this was obviously an issue throughout the UK. So if I was to kind of summarize what I did, I thought, okay, well, we can do something about this. So I created this thing called Level Up and got one of my designer friends to do me a little logo. I found a charity partner who would be able to provide some funds to me and who I could then partner with to go and find funds from other bodies. And I then went on social media and started begging for laptops. And actually, I'm just noticing it's almost our first year anniversary, because 26th of May was that was 2020. That was last year when I was 6 laptops at that point. So I go on social media and I beg for laptops. I get laptops given to me from some very, very kind donors. We clean them, we repair them, sometimes involving little Nerf bullets. Nerf being those little kind of guns. I know you have them in the States, but I'm not sure some other parts of the world might not know what I'm on about. But they're kind of toy guns that shoot these kind of pellets. I then install a new operating system on them, so Windows 10 generally, and I give them to local schools for onward donation to then the families. And that's a very important kind of aspect of the project, is that we are giving these laptops to the families. We're not loaning it to them. These are very much a gift for the families to do with as they wish. So that's the kind of the very high level kind of principle of what I've tried to. What's the demand? So where I live in a town called Hawley, which is south of London. And as you can see from the picture, we are just north of Gatwick Airport. So Gatwick Airport is the second biggest airport in the UK. It was the busiest single runway airport in the world, and so had a lot of traffic going through it. And as I'm sure you can imagine, Gatwick was the biggest employer in our area by a long, long way. And when the pandemic hit, Gatwick basically closed, and it's still essentially closed now. I mean, there are some flights going through, but it's very, very quiet. And so that hit our area a lot. We had families being made redundant or being put onto furlough. And we estimated that in our area, where our town is about 22,000 population, where we have about 2,500 kids at school, about 20% of them had this status called pupil premium. So this is where the government provides extra funding if the child has parents that are out of work, or other situations where they're in some way disadvantaged. So we reckon around half of them needed devices, about 250. Where we ended up was we supplied 330 laptops to the schools, and actually there's still demand now. So we rather underestimated our numbers. We provided 330. The UK government, through their schemes, provided 170. So I outstepped UK government 2 laptops to 1. Get in. Thank you very much. And as part of that, I got some fantastic little messages back. Now, one of the kind of principles of the project is that we're not giving the laptops directly to families. So actually, vast majority of the time, I don't know who gets them or where they go. We were giving them to schools because the schools have a very good idea of how, the situation of the family and how they're doing. But every so often I would get little messages back, and this was a lovely message that I got back from this young lady's mum, who was doing her spelling tests using her laptop. So things like that were just fantastic little nudges to keep going. So we did 330 laptops in Hawley. We think that's largely covered the demand that we saw here. So we expanded Level Up wider, and I partnered up with 2 other organisations, one called Voluntary Action, Reigate and Banstead, another one called Raven Housing Trust. So Raven Housing Trust are what we would call a housing authority in the UK. So they look after the social housing that we have, and they have social housing in our area. So we partnered up with them, and they continued Level Up on. So we're now up to just slightly over 1,000 laptops now, including the Raven Housing project, and as I say, just slightly over a year running, with 10 technical volunteers and other people driving laptops around, picking them up, dropping them off. Level Up has also inspired a few other projects. So we've had another project in the south coast of the UK, startup by a company called Sopro, who've got through around 100 laptops, and another project over in Woking, which is more southwest London, who have just started going and have got 50 laptops going. So we've had some effect. Nothing on the scale of the other two projects that we heard on today, but we have hopefully made a little bit of a difference. So I'm going to go through now a few of the lessons that I learned. So it's going to be a bit more of a kind of practical tips that I come up with, which hopefully will be useful if you're looking to set up a similar project where you are. So I mentioned at the beginning that having a charity partner is very, very useful. As an individual, I don't want to set up as a charity. That's a lot of paperwork. I've got to set up a bank account. I've got to have trustees. I've got to do all sorts of things. So far easier for me to go and find a charity partner and say, can you be my charity partner and go and help me raise funds? So in the UK, we have the YMCA, and the YMCA region for us is East Surrey. So they agreed to be my charity partner, and so I could raise funds through the YMCA, and they would then pay for my parts and my costs. And that made things very easy because everything is above board and legitimate because it's all done through a charity. There's all of the full kind of charity paper train that you need. But I didn't have to worry about all of the paperwork, so that was fantastic. Also mean that we could set up a Just Giving page for other donations. Just while I'm talking about donations, one other thing that worked really well, actually, which will work for most countries, perhaps not all, is we used an Amazon wish list system. So we set up through Amazon a wish list of all of the parts that we needed, and I shared those wish lists out on social media, particularly LinkedIn. And I found a lot of people buying parts through that wish list, particularly on LinkedIn, because I think people could claim them through their businesses, which was quite a nice little way through of getting people to donate. So that worked very well. From a sourcing laptops point of view, my main source were either social media or businesses. So from a social media point of view, we have a very busy social media page, a Facebook page for Hawley called Hawley Life, which has about 20,000 people on it. So obviously quite a lot of people outside of Hawley as well. So I use that to get the word out for Level Up and get people to ask for people to donate laptops. And I had a lot of individuals very generously donate laptops. The important thing is that local aspect of things actually worked really well for us, because if I got a laptop in and donated it to a school, I would post a picture of donating the laptop to that school. And because it's all in the local area, then people who then used to attend that school, or people with children who attend that school, would see that post and go, well, okay, this is a local project. I'm going to donate my laptop to it. So it kind of snowballed, had a snowball effect when you post on a local social media site and people see that these devices are staying in the area and benefiting families in the area. That seemed to make a really big difference, actually. One thing you really have to be specific about, though, is what kind of laptop you want, because I found people will want to give you something that they think will help, but quite often you'll get a laptop that isn't really very useful. So we made it very clear that it needed to be a Windows 7 or newer laptop for it to be new enough to be useful for us. And once we made that very clear, the vast majority of the machines that we had in were Windows 7 or newer and were useful. From a business point of view, it was a bit of a slow start getting businesses to donate. Initially, I don't think they really understood the problem. And what I found when we were talking to businesses, that the IT departments would typically return back and say, that sounds like a great thing to do, but couldn't possibly give you our laptops because of data security issues. And unfortunately, they picked the wrong person to give that explanation to, because in my career, I've worked 25 years in the internet industry. And I was actually the officer responsible for security at the last one I worked at. So I felt I had the answer very quickly back to say, no, that is actually a load of rubbish. You can give me your laptop. You can take the hard disk out, or you can wipe the data very easily on your hard disk. Or even, I'm sure you're using encryption on your computer, aren't you? Yes, I'm sure you are. Then well, if you give me the laptop, I can't get hold of your data anyway, because it's all encrypted, in the same way that if it was stolen or lost, someone wouldn't be able to get hold of the data. That's true, isn't it? Yes, that's true. So you have to kind of break down the barriers with businesses to try and get the laptops out of them. And eventually the IT person kind of will eventually give up and say, okay, we'll give you some laptops. So you just have to be persistent to get it out of them. From then kind of setting up the project, then there are a few things that I tried to do. So I kept record what I spent on it and where it eventually went, at least in terms that it got donated to. Not, I didn't know who, and that was useful for me really, just to keep a log of everything that had gone through with me, just in with any of the. I always wiped the hard disks on every single laptop that I got. Even if the person said that they'd done the wipe themselves, I would do another wipe just to make absolutely sure that there was never any personal data on any of the machines that we had donated to us. And I used a utility called Part of Magic to do that, which is a piece of software you can put on a USB stick, and you boot up the laptop with the USB stick, and you can then do a secure wipe on it. And then the physical cleaning is quite important as well, because these are not the newest of machines. So they're not the fastest of machines, but one of the things, really there are two things that can slow machines down. One of which is dust in the fan and the little kind of heat exchanger bit of a laptop. If the laptop gets clogged up with dust, it means it can't get rid of its heat. And if it can't get rid of its heat, the processor overheats and it eventually starts to slow down. It's called thermal throttling. So it means that the laptop eventually becomes slower and slower. So if you blast the dust out using one of these air dusters, that means that the laptop can breathe again, and it speeds it up a surprising amount. So physical cleaning is pretty important, especially the fan. You've got to make sure that it has enough memory. So I aimed for 4 gig of RAM, ideally 8. Storage is the other area of speed. So if it's a laptop that comes with an old style hard disk, a kind of spinning matter style hard disk, they are now really pretty slow, particularly for modern operating systems like Windows. So once you've wiped it, take it out and replace it with a solid state hard disk, one based on memory chips rather than physical spinny disks. They are relatively cheap to buy. I would say in UK currency about 21 pounds, which is about $30 odd for a 120 gigabyte disk. And that makes a huge difference as to how fast the machine is. So if you clean out the dust, put a solid state disk in, you've really given that laptop a new lease of life. Batteries is another area of pain. Quite often you'll find batteries are failing. You can replace batteries. It gets a bit more expensive again, because a replacement battery is sometimes $35–40. It's worth, if you want to buy batteries, it's really worth looking at reviews, because there's an awful lot of very, very poor batteries out there that last a month and don't go any longer. So I looked kind of 4+ star reviews on Amazon and different brands, some to avoid, some not to avoid. As I mentioned earlier, I tried to install Windows as much as I possibly could, because I didn't want this just to be a machine that was useful for the student. I wanted it to be useful for the wider family. Chromebooks are fantastic laptops, but I felt if you could get a full Windows machine to somebody, then they've got an even wider range of things that they could potentially do. So that's what I aimed for. If I had a laptop that couldn't run Windows, because either didn't have a license or it was too old, then I used a operating system called Cloud Ready, which is by a company called Netherware. And that's a kind of, it's like a variant of the Chrome operating system that you can put on regular PC laptops, and make it be basically like a Chromebook. And so that's quite a good alternative. And if you're installing Cloud Ready, you probably don't need to replace the hard disk. That actually works very well on regular hard disks. If you're putting Windows on, solid state disks are really a must now. What about Macs? We got a few Macs. I love a Mac, you know, it's a lovely piece of hardware, but they're a real pain. And I got to the point where I was just basically started refusing them because they're difficult to deal with. They're expensive to refurbish. Quite often parts, you can't replace parts at all. Batteries are difficult. And unfortunately, Apple laptops, they seem to, they don't support the latest operating system quite soon in their life. So Mac laptops from about 2012, 2013 don't support the latest Mac operating system, which means you then start to have potential security issues. So I was a bit of a, oh, that's lovely, thank you for giving me this expensive thing that's now going to be very difficult. So that was always a bit of a problem with Macs. Safeguarding is a really important issue because you're basically giving a computer to a family and to a young person, and they need to be protected. So this was one of the reasons why it was very important for me that I never directly gave laptops to families. I always wanted them to go via a third party, a trusted third party, and have that third party do some cursory checks on things as well. So that for me was a very, very important aspect of things. The other thing that I also started to invest in more kind of halfway through the project was just these little simple webcam covers. They're very cheap, particularly if you buy them in bulk. And you can put them on top of the webcam and close them shut. And it just means that the young person that uses the laptop can, you know, close the laptop cover and keep themselves safe if they want to do that. So it's little things like that that can be done to try and help with the safeguarding side of things. The final thing was that each of the laptops that I provided, I gave a letter that said, this laptop is basically yours to do with as you wish. Would love you to you know, learn and study, but if it becomes an issue with either putting food on the table and selling this laptop, then please sell the laptop. I would rather you did that and didn't go hungry. But it did also explain that the laptops came with no warranty. So if it went wrong, unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to do very much to fix it. And that was really just from a self-preservation point of view. I didn't want to have to be on the hook for hundreds of laptops, technical support, which I have a day job, I have a family of 3 kids. I have difficulty saying no at the best of times. So that was something that I did. And then finally, power testing. It's always important to remember that these laptops have got a power supply with them, which has got to run at, you know, 200 volts or 100 volts. So it's important to get that checked. And the schools that I worked with have power testers, so they could then power test them and put the certificate on, sticker on them to say that they've been checked. So the final kind of tips that I would suggest if you're going to do this is try and keep spares. When you get a laptop that perhaps you can't use because it's broken, then it's a good idea to try and get as many of the spares from it as you can, because you will almost certainly get another one of those at some point in the future. And I've reused a lot of parts from laptops in various different ways. You'd be amazed at the screens that come on laptops. A lot of the laptop manufacturers use the same manufacturer in the background for the same screen. So take the screen out and you'll very often find, you know, from an HP, and it will quite often work in a Dell, and vice versa. Don't let it take over your life. I really let it take over my life at one point. I had, at one point I had 28 laptops installing in my lounge, and my wife and kids went a bit crazy. So don't let it take over your life. I would suggest not getting excited and fixing your friends' laptops. It's one thing refurbishing a laptop that you've had donated to you, but once you get your friends' laptops in, then it's got all their data on it. And I thought, yeah, that's fine. I can sort your laptop out for you. And then 10 hours later, because it was an absolute pain to do. So I would suggest not fixing your friends' laptops, and definitely take lots and lots of pictures, because it's very useful from sharing social media posts, but also the people who donated you funds will eventually want some evidence of what happened. So take lots of pics, and that's useful for that. So that's me. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you so much, Martin. Just a little note that during the Q&A, our interpreters are having a little break. So we'll give them a 7-10 minute break. And meanwhile, we can chat a little bit about your work. And I was wondering, I think we've discussed this previously when we were talking, but I was wondering about getting corporate partners engaged with your work. I know that you've mentioned that you use social media to get the attention of people in your community, but are you trying to engage corporate world as well? And if yes, how are you doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So so the approach that I took from the getting corporate interested is I first researched the larger businesses in the area. So you can imagine around Gatwick Airport, there are a number of larger businesses. So I researched who they were. I then used LinkedIn to find out who the head of IT or chief technology officer, or a senior person on the IT side of things, and find out who they were. Because particularly for IT, you almost always have that person on LinkedIn. So then I figured out what their email address was, which is usually fairly easy. First name dot last name, or first initial last surname, that kind of thing, and sent them an email. I basically sent them an email explaining the project, explaining the problem, explaining that I knew that they had laptops because they always do, and trying to explain that the data security issue isn't really a big issue. I got people completely ignoring me. I got some very quick replies saying, sorry, we can't help. But I did get some businesses saying, yeah, that sounds like a good project, and we can get involved. And so one example was one of the gas companies in the UK. I started chasing basically a year ago, and 3 weeks ago, we got 230 laptops from them. So it's worth persisting. it's worth persisting.
Oh, that's amazing. And the other thing I was wondering about is, so your movement, I guess, campaign has started just like ours as a response to pandemic. And unlike Tech Goes Home and Close the Gap, that have been doing that for a little while now. And I was wondering, are you planning on continuing doing your collecting computers and donating them? And if yes, then why are you doing that?
Yeah. In short, yes. I think the digital inequality is still a huge issue, and will continue to be a huge issue. I think what we are finding right now, so in the UK, we are at a bit of a stage where we're starting to come out of kind of lockdown. So the kids are back at school. Actually, as of Monday now, we can now start going out to restaurants. People can start even traveling a little bit. So the attention has kind of been taken away from this issue, which is making it quite difficult to get donations, and also making it quite difficult to get schools to focus on this, because they've got other problems now. They've got to deal with COVID testing and all the other issues the government likes to give them. So it's becoming hard. But there is still a problem, and we're trying to find ways of encouraging schools to still be interested in this, and encouraging businesses to still donate. So I think this will continue. Unfortunately, I don't have time to turn this into a Close the Gap or a Tech Goes Home type project. But I'm hoping with the partnership I've got with Raven Housing that they will keep things going, because their social housing tenants, there's big overlap between this issue and their tenants, so they'll keep it progressing. and we'll see if we can kind of make a more of a regular project of it.
Thank you so much, Martin. And if we don't have any questions from our attendees, dear attendees, please feel free to leave questions in chat or Q&A box. And if there aren't any questions, thank you so much, Martin. And yes, just like as I mentioned before, we'll have a small panel discussion a little later, so please feel free to stay here. Or you can join a little bit later, and in 40 minutes, we'll have a panel discussion.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so on to the next speaker. And before I introduce our next speaker, I would like to do our traditional poll questions. Ta-da! So please, question number 9. Okay, here we go. So you probably have heard about Connected Kazakhstan since you've joined our conference, but we also have a sister organization in a different country. And where do you think that country, where do you think our organization is located? Let's give everyone 20 seconds to respond to that question. Okay, I think we're ready to see the results now. Yay, everyone got it right. Our sister organization is located in Kosovo, and we have just a second. Okay, sorry, no, it was sorry, just got a little confused. And before I introduce, before I let our next speaker speak, I would like to share a little bit more about how Connected Kosovo has started. I assume Antigona will share a little bit as well, but we were really excited to hear that there are other people who are passionate about digital equality around the world as well. And when Connected Kosovo team has reached out and mentioned that they want to be doing similar project in their country, we were extremely excited to hear that. So please join me in welcoming Antigona, who will talk a little bit more about Connected Kosovo.
Hello everyone. Hello Nancy. Thank you so much for organizing this conference, and I'm so happy to hear that there are a lot of other partners, individuals, or organizations that have been highly involved especially during the pandemic, because the digital inequality has been mostly pronounced during the last year. Before I even start, I just shared my information and the web page and the social media links on the chat, so everyone can look later. And if someone wants to get in touch, then feel free to email me. So yeah, Nancy, I'll actually share a chronology of our being and how we came about as a team. And of course, I'll share the story of how Connected Kazakhstan actually influenced our decision to pursue the same project. Just let me know if everything is right. Can you see the screen? Shall I?
Yes, it looks great.
Yeah, okay. So I just want to give you a brief history. Masa Online in Albania, Kosovo is for those that don't really know where Kosovo is. It is placed in Balkans, and it's populated with Albanians. In Albanian language, Masa Online means learn online. And as a team, as young students, we started as a campaign in 2015 here in Kosovo to raise awareness on digital solutions to education. Back then, we started involving more higher education institutions, as we saw it's more important for students to be early on engaged with technology into their learning processes. And it was also something that was highly lacking in our country, and basically not only in Kosovo, but in the Balkans region in general. Education has been, the education system has been struggling, especially because of the many multiple wars that happened around the region, and the system has had to start over again and again for multiple times. But yeah, and we registered as an NGO. Our campaign then turned into an NGO in 2018, where we wanted to bring blended learning into place. We wanted to still promote the transition from the traditional education to inclusion of digital solutions to education. And in 2020, with the hit of pandemic, and when we saw that our most important job would be in fighting digital inequality, as many children were left behind because they did not have equipment to pursue their education. We wanted to facilitate efforts into enabling these children get back to school. And with hearing about Connected Kazakhstan and how they started about, we were more than ready to join the initiative. And we were so lucky to have Gulnaz, Danyar, and the Connected Kazakhstan team to share their knowledge and know-how with us, and pretty much guide us through in the first phase of getting together as a team and initiating the program in Kosovo. However, we saw that many organizations and stakeholders in Kosovo were basically getting together and trying to bridge the digital divide. We saw it was important for us to to focus more in developing using the data and developing a system that would track the digital divide. Therefore, our program Connected Kosovo was more focused on using big data for, as the title of our presentation is called, using big data for better social good. So our system will inform all stakeholders in our country on where exactly the numbers and the children were located in the country that were missing out education because they didn't have a digital equipment to access online learning. Just a brief explanation of how the system came about. There was a program initiated in Kosovo called Textitution 4.0, where we presented our project, and then donors such as UNICEF and Austrian Development Agency wanted to pursue and help us in developing the idea and creating the system that would register and track the number of children missing out education because of the digital divide. Though we had great support in tech-wise, we also have a team that has worked tirelessly in the field to gather information, to gather first period of data from municipality directorates of education. It was very important to first and foremost understand the data that are available within the directorates of education, and later on also the data that are available into the Ministry of Education, so we could compare our analysis or our system and the generation of the data with the data that are already in place, and to see whether there is a mismatch or if the data are actually correct. So in terms of the general objective, it was for sure to create a system that would register and track the digital divide in Kosovo, and of course also register the bridging of digital divide, because many stakeholders, as I said, intervened and distributed equipment. So one of the categories in the system is the distribution of the equipment, which would later on the system process it and show the real-time data. But other specific objectives of the system and that the data would provide us was to enable a transparent system that is a reference point to different stakeholders in Kosovo. The other one is to create a participatory advocacy, transparency, and accountability, because we are operating based on the open data principles. Our data that are in the tracking system, which I'll show you in a bit, are data based on the principles of open data, because they can be downloaded and they can be for further analysis by different stakeholders. Of course, the same system serves us to together to collect assets as well, because besides creating the system, we also wanted to contribute in collecting and distributing assets to individuals or children that we have identified through our data, at least be some help to some of the children. So we established the grants to promote individual giving. We have run 3 different campaigns to attract donors, being it individual corporations or organizations, and join our cause in bridging the digital divide. Just to mention some of them, one was we tried to connect NGOs, non-governmental organizations, to join our cause by giving 1 or more equipment in the name of their staff or their organization, so they can be part of the connected cause as well. And last but not least, as a Center for Distance Education, we want to promote digital inclusion into education, because children are digital natives, and also as Marnie from Workless Gap said earlier, having an equipment is basically a basic need now for children, and in order to be in the same pace with the technological development of the world, children need to have access to digital solutions in education way in advance. And we also promote the right to distance education through advocacy campaigns and through engaging Ministry of Education within our programs too. But just so to show it, the way the team joined together, and we first of all created a methodology on how we should use the tracking system and how we can use the data to develop this tracking system. This is just a visualization of how connected Kosovo tracking system looked like prior to its development. And then this is how it looks like in our webpage. Let me just open the site and I'll show you the interaction with the connected Kosovo tracking system. Can you see the webpage now?
No, we only see your presentation.
Okay, I'll share the webpage. So you can see it now, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the first periodical check or registering of our data from different municipalities. And then for the first period of our tracking, we have identified around 7,000 cases of children not attending school at all because they didn't have access to technology or digital, they didn't have a digital device that could facilitate their learning. For example, if we go to the capital of Kosovo, Pristina, we could see we also have 3 different categories of children that were integrated in the system, so we can understand their background from where they come from. So, and we also, I think we have it here in this municipality, where we can also show the distributed assets. This is just an example of how more data are going to be integrated in the portal. So when we plan to get all the data from different stakeholders, integrate in the system, and then the system will generate the actual state of the digital inequality in Kosovo. So these numbers give us a clear understanding on where each municipality stands in terms of children that do not have access to digital equipment. And here the data can be downloaded. So far we have the file, Excel file, where the data can be downloaded and further analyzed for different purposes. I'll go back to my presentation. So the beauty of big data is that besides of identifying and registering the digital gap in the country, it gives us as a center or different parties in general the opportunity to get to further analyze them and get information on where we stand in terms, for example, a gender gap in distance education or gender gap in digital digital access or access to digital equipment. So for example, we have here 4.7% of non-participants of children in general. It's around 34,000 children that did not attend education. 14,000 were because they did not have a digital asset. But then when it comes to gender, more girls were less girls were attending online education because they did not have access, and more boys were having access to digital equipment. But the numbers also differed depending on the municipalities. Major municipalities represent bigger municipalities with less boys having access to digital equipment, and then minor municipalities represent more rural municipalities with again more boys being left out. But these are the school data because we also have more boys involved into the education system. As I mentioned earlier, there are 3 components of the connected Kosovo tracking system. And first component is to identify the number of children per municipality that were not able or are still not able to attend online learning if digital solutions to education are about to continue. We first of all have to bridge the digital gap in order to enable children to attend distance education in the future or have access to digital solutions. And then the second component is collecting assets. So our platform serves, as I mentioned, serves for us to collect assets and then distribute assets to as many children as we can throughout the program. Okay, these are data that have been then transferred into research reports, but the data were all the data derived from the tracking system. However, in terms of assets collected, we have not been so successful in that because we have been more focused in using data and understanding the situation where we stand on, and so that our data can help others that are collecting assets and distributing assets. But however, we have collected a few around, I think now there are more than 20 assets, but this is a bit older slide. And we have, these are some of the pictures that show some of the children that have benefited from our program. What we want to do further with the connected program, we of course want to strengthen the tracking system. We want to create periodical tracking, so we really understand based on the periods where each municipality stands and where we should intervene throughout the time. All the data, big data, will help us create or draft observational studies and understand where should we intervene in terms of also delivering training in the digital skills, or delivering training, teacher training for giving teaching online. And then we hope that together with all the partners, our system will help us to close the gap, digital gap in Kosovo. I think my presentation is a bit shorter, so I'll give more time to questions if there are. And
no worries at all. It's perfect timing.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much.
But yeah, this is the presentation and how we use the data.
Thank you so much, Antigona. And a little note to our interpreters, then they can take a break now for 10 minutes and we'll just do a little Q&A. So I was wondering how many people actually involved in data tracking system, and what would take, like, for example, we're connected are not as good at in tracking and data and collecting data, and what do you think would it take for us to start a similar system? What kind of people should we be looking for?
Yeah, we have seen that only the first phase of, or the first period of collecting data is the period that involves most of the people. Usually how we work is we contact the directorates of education within municipalities, and there is a chain of information that works for us. So we ask for the directorates of education to give us data from the schools. So we have our dashboards that we share with them, and the schools have to fill them in so we can integrate them into our system. But this is only for the first time, because the way the data works, it's easier when you have the first contact. You can just pursue or develop the system further on only by analyzing data and also having data shared from the parties themselves.
Thank you so much. And do you have statisticians or data analysts in your team?
Yeah, we do. We actually are right now 6 people in the team. We are expanding.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we do. We are aiming to strengthen our research. I can call it
this is really exciting.
but yeah, research area. And so far we are 6 of us, and we all have some statistical background.
This is super exciting.
Thank you, Nessie.
And the other thing I was wondering about is, it's probably similar to questions I've asked our previous speakers, is so the spotlight on digital divide is fading a little with the pandemic being not over, but slightly things are opening up and people go to school. How do you plan on keeping the attention of communities and government on this issue?
Yeah, as I mentioned, Nancy, at the beginning, our role was to develop campaigns and bring attention to digital integration in the education system. But what we couldn't do, pandemic actually did. Pandemic gave the deserved attention to digital solutions and integration and blended learning in general. So in our country, for example, the Ministry of Education has taken the initiative and drafted the strategy, digitalization strategy for education for a 5-year period. So now they're pretty much focused in the future of education in Kosovo, and they want all partners that have been involved during the pandemic to also be involved further on developing and integrating digitalization in the education. I know for sure that there's a lot of skepticism still and some hesitation, but I think the future is digital solutions to education, and most people are aware of it now.
Thank you. And I guess the last question for me, and a little reminder to all our attendees that if you have questions, please feel free to leave them in chat on Q&A. But my question would be that you are probably in a closer situation to Kazakhstan than our previous speakers in terms of the urgency of need of technology. And what I mean is that we often face, when we talk to people or donators, they say, oh, computer is not the first thing. There are people who are starving, there are people who have no food, no clothes. Why are you collecting computers? What would be your response to those people?
Yeah, we've actually had situations like that, and it's hard to respond quickly to this question because basic needs, technology is still not considered as a very, very basic need. But what we could say for maybe would be that technology is something means that will advance their economic status in the future, for example. And if their children are equipped, or not only their children but themselves are equipped with technological skills, they could maybe help themselves in solving the issue that they're in. But it's not an answer that can of course make them happy right away. It's something that you have to tell them that it's the future, but then not something that they can solve their immediate need for, let's say, food or shelter.
Yes, thank you so much. That's pretty much a similar thing we try to explain to our community and people in our community. And if there are no more questions, thank you so much, Antigona. And
thank
yes,
you for having me.
Please feel free to stay for our panel discussion, which we will have right after Gulnaz and Danyar's presentation.
Of course, thank you.
And traditionally, our last poll question. So we've all gathered here to discuss path to digital equality and how organizations from around the world try to reach it and move towards it. But there's also another cause we've gathered here for, and I was wondering if you guys know how old is Connected Kazakhstan? We'll give 20 seconds for everyone to respond. Hopefully no one's going to Google it. And even if you do, you might not find the answers there. Okay, I think we're good to go with the results. Okay, so most of you are correct. This is our anniversary. We turned 1 year about a couple of weeks ago in April. As I mentioned earlier, Connected has started this initiative that was a response to pandemic. And when Gulnaz and Danyar were working on another project, they realized that there's an urgent need for computers in our community. So many students have been left in situations where they had no access to computers, and that meant at that moment that they had no access to education at all. And I would like to welcome Danyar and Gulnaz, who've created Connected last year, and also I would like to thank them so much for creating this organization that we're all a part of a team of. It's an amazing family. We're all gathered here in a little room, and it's really not just a little words from a participant. It's not just about people who are receiving computers or people who are donating. A big part of it is our team, which is like a family, and really grateful to be part of it. And welcome, Gulnaz and Danyar.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for staying on for so long. And I'm so excited today because I think one of our dreams today is coming true of gathering this kind of organization who are working on the same cause. Last year, when we just started it, I remember that how Danyar and our team were joking that maybe we could turn into the global organization and support each other. And today we are seeing the results of our work, and I'm so inspired by today's speakers and what they are doing in their communities. And we would like to share more about what we are doing in Kazakhstan, why it is important for us and to our community, and about our further plans. So let me share my screen. All right, so as all of our partners and colleagues mentioned, and I don't think it's something new for us, that in Kazakhstan, we have educational inequities that is mostly connected with geographical location and the socioeconomic status. Unfortunately, in Kazakhstan, there's a big digital and educational divide, which was highlighted in PISA studies in 2018, where children from regions, specifically from Mangostar region and Turkestan Oblast, they were behind from their peers in Almaty, which is the biggest city in Kazakhstan, for 2 years, for 2 academic years. And we can't imagine, and we are afraid even to imagine how this divide is getting bigger. So we decided, so let me go. As Nessie mentioned, Danyar and I originally started Teach for Kazakhstan organization, which is also in mission of bringing educational equity and especially quality education to the regions, because we believe that every kid, no matter their socioeconomic status or geographical location, they need to receive proper education so they can have quality education. So in March 2020, when the pandemic hit and we all started to work remotely and study remotely, we saw the statistics. In March, 30,100 students in Kazakhstan didn't have technology to study remotely. What does it mean is that they didn't have connectivity and they might have be left behind. But we thought, oh, we need to take the action immediately. And we didn't want them to miss, say, classes for months or so. But as we all see now, it's still continuing to happen. Yes, and most of these kids are from rural areas. And in Kazakhstan, we have most of our, geographically, in Kazakhstan, there are lots of schools located in rural areas. In fact, half of the school children, they study in villages. Again, to the implications of digital inequity in Kazakhstan, according to ISOS, which is a study on computer literacy, where Kazakhstan participated in 2018, only 33% of students got to the basic level, which means that students didn't have skills and enough resources to study online during this educational crisis. And unfortunately, Kazakhstan scored the lowest among 14 countries which participated in the study. Danyar, to you.
So we asked ourselves what we can do to help children continue their distance learning. And 1 year ago, we started as a team of 4 enthusiasts, Gulnaz, Nara, Thomas, and I. And today we are grown to the team of 10 people and dozens of volunteers. And what was the reason behind we were launching this initiative, that we came from quite similar background. We all from the regions, from small towns, rural areas, and moving to Almaty, which is the largest city in Kazakhstan, and living and studying abroad for quite for quite a long time was really life-changing experiences. When we came back to Kazakhstan, we recognized our privileges to have high quality education, despite that were living not in really favorable geographical locations. And we recognized the importance of having the network of the supportive and professional people around, the importance of the professional networks. So, and as in Kazakhstan, we have quite strong family ties and quite extended families. And so we know that from our relatives living in rural areas of how many challenges they are facing every day, and how they are struggling with the basic with the basic needs actually. And we understand that the kids from these disadvantaged communities have slightly less opportunities than their peers from the big cities. So this was the reason behind we started Connected. And what we are also struggling in Kazakhstan. So even though the education specialists are working in Kazakhstan, they are quite familiar with all the challenges in education we have, but still a bunch of them are still living in an information vacuum. So we are also seeking this support, even to recognize that some categories of the school children have more privilege to get the high quality education and to unlock their full potential. And as a result of our 1 year work, almost 700 children positively affected. That means they came from the families, usually with multiple child. So they received equipment, laptops, iPads, or smartphones. That was collected before, and some statistics that will be shared by Gulnaz.
Yes, and as our previous speakers mentioned, from the very beginning, we understood that just distributing laptops wouldn't be enough. So when we started to work with our beneficiaries, children and their parents, we realized that we need to provide not only technology, but as the Gosholm mentioned, they need skills. And as Antigone mentioned from Kosovo, we thought that we need to do our own research, who we are helping and what is a portrait of our beneficiaries. So right now we have distributed 174 devices, and this, as Danyar mentioned, affected around 700 kids. Our families, they have average of 4 or 5 kids, and so far, 35% of them, they have special educational needs. As we try to prioritize the rural areas, so far we have helped 60 kids there from rural areas, but we also acknowledge that the digital divide is not only in rural areas, but it could be It could be true in urban areas, even in Almaty. Unfortunately, for this kind of big families, their average salary varies from less than $100 per month to a little more than $200. As recent studies show that, and we also recognized how prices for technology gone up since we purchased them in May 2020 to now, that this takes 70% of their income of the families that we help. So, and regarding internet, when we again spoke to parents, because they have 4 or 5 kids in the family, sometimes they have 7, they can't provide internet or mobile data for everyone. So as Theo mentioned, this could be stakes of having a food in place, or choosing to study remotely.
Obviously, digital divide is a global issue, and as we see that only 55 households globally have internet only, and so equity issues are worldwide, but on different stage and on different scale. And we also try to say that the Kazakhstan is not unique. So there's many parts of the world are facing similar challenges. So we have to learn from the experiences and to learn from the countries with a similar local context, with a similar background, but also not only focusing on these countries. And usually, as in Kazakhstan, when it's trying to measure the success of the government, they usually compare it to the developing countries, but not with the developed ones. So we think that we have to take into account all the parts of the world, and and we understand that we have to build connections between civil society actors, between the equity advocates, and it was also the rationale behind to organize this conference. And so we also have a connected expansion plan. So what does it mean? It does mean that we're going to be like franchise to be spread over the world. But what we really want to share our experience, we think that we learned quite a lot. Working is in a quite challenging environment, like in Kazakhstan. And for 1 year, we accumulated some experience, especially in terms of working on the online platform, and we improved logistics of the equipment delivery. And we created educational content in Russian language, in Kazakh languages, and we tried different social media strategies. And we want to share our best practices to all the advocates in different countries. Currently, we are supporting our friends in Kyrgyzstan to launch the initiative, and we definitely believe that we can bring value for activists in other countries. We understand that usually when you start your initiative, there are quite a few opportunities and very limited financial resources, human resources. So we think that learning from our experiences could help to skip unnecessary struggles when you're launching such kind of projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. And And yes, as Daniel mentioned, that we ourselves also reached out to Close the Gap, That Goes Home, and Level Up. So we are also happy to support anyone who's working on this cause and share everything that we have. And we would like to be in touch. This is our email. We are all across the social media, and we are constantly sharing our progresses there. And I just want to thank everyone, and especially amazing Connected team for organizing this event, and our partners and everyone who is still staying on. And we'll just pass it to over Nessie.
Thank you so much, everyone. And now on to our very short panel discussion with our speakers. I see that some of our attendees are already leaving, and it's quite late here in Kazakhstan. And we're really thankful for the ones who are still here, that you guys are still listening in. But before we close our event, I just wanted to hear a little bit more. Wait, hear a little bit more about why about the implications of the pandemic. We've talked about it a lot during our event, and how a lot of people are now, how digital divide is gaining attention and gained a lot of attention during the pandemic. But we're now seeing that it's losing its attention due to things are opening up. And I wanted to hear from our speakers, and I might have asked it from some of our speakers already. What are your current plans, and how do you think organizations such as us should move forward beyond the pandemic?
I'm happy to jump in. It's a great question. We did a sort of mini strategic plan at the end of 2020, looking at the priorities for the next year plus, and thinking about, okay, in this environment of such incredible uncertainty, how can we best direct our resources, best plan to maximize our impact? And we came out of that with 4 priorities, all focusing around expansion in some way. So one of them is geographic expansion. We're going from our regional footprint within sort of the greater Boston region to places around the state. So we're looking statewide, really testing our hypotheses, hopefully growing from there to places around the country, but just making sure that we kind of do it in a deliberate, tested way. And then the second is incorporating our some of the benefits of our virtual model into in-person once we can go back. So I mentioned this a little bit on the panel, but how can we leverage what we've learned through COVID to make our program even better going forward? Another one is on the revenue side. We're doing more fee for service. So so many organizations have now realized that digital equity is really critical to their missions. So even if it loses a little bit of momentum, sort of on the political or fundraising in those landscapes, we find that the organizations doing incredible work, the sort of social service organizations, still do realize that they really need it. So what we're doing more and more of is working with partners where they pay for constituents of theirs to do Tech Goes Home. So it's the same model, it's funded by actual partners. And then the fourth is advocacy. And I think that's probably a big one in all of our countries, is making sure that we keep the drumbeat going on a local level, a national level, hopefully a global level, to make sure that policy makers and decision makers and people of influence across industries continue to keep this issue top of mind.
Thank you so much, Theo. Does anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, I'd quite like to, if that's all right, please. Yeah, so I mentioned a little bit before about probably the next stage for Level Up, which is more focusing on the social housing residents and how we can make sure that they can continue to get laptops. I think one of the things that hopefully will be a positive benefit from the pandemic, if there can be ever such a thing, is that the businesses that have interacted with us and are now donating laptops now understand that there is a better and different route to using to what they can do with their old hardware now that the pandemic is over. So I'm rather hoping that keeps the supply of laptops flowing to an extent when the businesses know that they can do something else with them. I think from an individual donation point of view, the other thing I'm rather hoping that we can do with this is helping people understand that they can actually use their device for longer than perhaps they originally thought they could. And so I'm looking to try and set up some kind of repair type cafe setups where someone could bring a computer and perhaps replace their own hard disk and upgrade it themselves. And I'm hoping that will in turn then encourage more people to then also donate their laptops to other people who they can see don't have suitable access to IT equipment. That the crazy thing about all of this is the laptops that I've been getting, and I'm sure it's true for others, have just been sitting there doing nothing. They've just been sitting under people's beds or sitting in cupboards in offices, and they kind of rot there for a few years, and eventually somebody chucks them out and recycles them. And I think now I'm hoping that people understand that actually these laptops do have useful life from the kind of 3-year point where the maintenance agreement ends to 6, 7, 8, 9, potentially even 10 years, and you can continue using them, but with a little bit of work perhaps required. So I'm hoping that will be one of the other changes.
This is such a great idea. I love the idea of Repair Cafe, and something we might implement with Connected. And the next question I was wondering about is, many say that digital divide is a waiting game, and that having access to computers or internet is like having a car maybe 80 years ago. It's a little luxury for some, but in time, everyone will have it. Do you disagree or agree?
If I may, I'll jump in.
Sure. Thank you.
I think I mentioned that now we're living in digital era, and most of the people that are born are digital natives. So that makes us understand that having a laptop or having digital equipment in the home or schools or wherever is going to be something natural. It's going to be there by default in the future. However, it depends on the context, because if we talk about countries that have been in transition, like our country, like Kosovo, we still have schools that don't have, or classrooms that don't have even a computer or PC in the classroom. And then we only have a computer lab with 20 computers. And then 20 computers are used by 200 or 400 children. So depending on the context, the use of digital equipment and the distribution, it's also what we have seen has happened. But of course, I believe that in the near future, with the development of the technology and with all the interventions by different stakeholders, this is going to be a long gone issue. And maybe we'll talk about innovation in other terms, not just transition from one form of learning to more digital, but innovation in terms of how we can use the technology in place for life purposes.
Thank you, Antigona.
Yeah, I'd like to agree with Antigona and just say that we've been noticing that, like, yes, one of our main purposes of Connected here in Kazakhstan is being an advocate, as Tia mentioned, and creating the awareness about why educational equity is important for all of us, not for those who are struggling, or again, like we compare those kids who are sitting in Almaty in a separate room with a good internet connection, and maybe it seems like it's not connected to us right now, or we're fine, but we always try to connect our work to the circular economy, like Marnie mentioned. And as a young country, again, like Kosovo, if we won't work on this, closing the digital divide right now, we may have worse case scenarios. I don't want to sound dramatic, but it is what it is. So that's what we are trying to do, and that's why we think the work in Kazakhstan is important.
Thank you, Gulnaz. So on to our last question that is a bit more emotional. And our team was wondering what inspires you to continue your work and do what you do.
I'll jump in here. For me, it's definitely the people that we work with. Just I spend a lot of my time behind a computer, particularly during COVID, but the times I get to go in person and visit courses and see someone do their first video chat, as I mentioned, or visit a class of people who are in pretty desperate situations financially, and they figure out how to apply for a job online. We work with a women's day shelter for victims of domestic violence, and I remember visiting one of their classes, and they had a small one of just 6 women, but 4 of those 6 women got jobs through the skills that they learned in a Tech Goes Home class, sort of Amazon warehouse. One was Dunkin' Donuts, I think. So, good, reliable jobs, and the difference that can make for those women and their family, and seeing the joy and the pride is really inspiring.
Actually, yeah, I would. I'm really glad you mentioned domestic abuse, actually, Theodora, because that's one of the charities that we've been supporting in our area as well as victims of domestic abuse, and it's so important because the women and families that have been escaping a domestic abuse have absolutely nothing. They've fled their home and have nothing that they brought with them, so they have to rebuild their lives from scratch. And yeah, I've again indirectly had feedback from some families that we've supported in that scenario, and it makes an incredible difference to them. So yeah, things like that, little letters and notes back, and the smiles on people's faces that you see, definitely that's for me the thing that keeps me going.
Thank you.
I'll share. Usually I share my story and how it is connected with my grandma. That's when you said it's emotional, it's really emotional for me. The times have drastically changed for me. My story and my grandma's story. She was living in a village and she could only attend 4 grades because to go to the 5th grade, she would have to go to another village, and then her family wouldn't feel like she's safe to go there. So now the times have changed, but the desire of my grandmother to pursue education has never vanished. And I think a lot of children nowadays would have to go to a different city or town or village to pursue their education further, but they don't have the financial means. And I think the window of opportunity that the technology is providing can make this desire reality for many children. So yeah, I think that we have to change the discourse of what has happened when technology was not around, and how we can leverage technology to bring about a better future.
Thank you so much for sharing, Antigona.
Yeah, I want to share also. Antigona reminded me about this time. Actually, I want to share this fun fact that actually my grandmother, she sold one of her apartments. At that time, in the 90s, it costed around $1,000. And she actually bought me the first PC computer at that time. And yeah, what really motivates me that I want to see the families to value the education and the importance of having a laptop and basic equipment for their children. And because when we first delivering laptops with Gulnaz and the team to these families, what I really was shocked that most of these families, they have TV. They are not the cheapest one TVs, but they don't have a computer and laptops. And so it's what was we were discussing what was the reason behind it. We understand that maybe for some families, the education is not really top priority for that. And yeah, it's really, I think we always discussing with the Gulnaz that it's this motivation truly is not, it's not rational. It's really hard to measure how we can still keep going, but definitely the people, faces, and our team who is organizing actually this conference, it's a great inspiration for us. And we see that really dozens of young people and volunteers who are really ready to help for nothing. I mean, we don't even promise anything to them. And so we see so many people joining us, and we are really growing, and it really gives us this energy.
Thank you, Daniela. I had no idea about your grandmother's story. It takes an international conference to get to know your team better. Gulnaz, do you want to share your story?
I just want to add that, yeah, I agree that I think why we're working on this is to see this happy faces of kids when they receive laptops, and whenever like we think about the process of our work, we have highly motivated and work like young people with high work ethics. But still, like when we think about what is behind of our work, is that, or what would be the process if we delay something, is that the kid might miss a class. That's always on our mind, and how that can affect their future. So yes, I'm really now very grateful and again like emotional, because I also came from Shymkent, which is a small city in Kazakhstan, and subsequent events helped me to be where I am right now. And I think lots of people impacted my life, and I'm so happy to see how we and our team and our partners around the globe are just giving this access. And we don't like to say we're helping kids. We would like to say that we're working with them because they are brilliant kids with their dreams and goals. They just need resources to study and achieve their dreams. So I'm so happy for today's conference, and yeah, thank you, team, and thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you for having us. Bringing
Thank you, everyone. So this was our last question. If anyone who is left from attendees have any questions, please feel free to reach out to on our website and our social media. We're always happy to answer your questions. And thank you so much, everyone, Theodora, Martin, and Tigona. Marnie couldn't join our panel discussion, but yeah, thank you all so much for joining us. And we are looking forward for future collaborations.